when friendship or love our sympathies move, when truth in a glance should appear, the lips may beguile with a dimple or smile, but the test of affection's a tear. Too oft is a smile but the hypocrite's wile, to mask detestation or fear. Give me the soft sigh, whilst the soul-telling eye is dimmed for a time with a tear. Mild charity's glow, to us mortals below, shows the soul from barbarity clear. Compassion will melt where this virtue is felt, and its dew is diffused in a tear. The man doomed to sail with the blasts of the gale, through billows Atlantic to steer, as he bends o'er the wave which may soon be his grave, the green sparkles bright with a tear. That was more Byron. This is another early Byron. This is, I think, is believed to be written a few years after the poem I did last week. This one's called "The Tear," shocker. And this is another one that was ridiculed, explicitly called out by this reviewer in the Edinburgh back in what was it? It was 1808. There was a review written, and he says it's kind of he makes a really vague reference to this poem. He mentions Lord Byron should also have a care of attempting what the greatest poets have done before him. Then he references a specific poem, and then he says, in like manner, the exquisite lines of Mr. Rogers on a Tear might have warned the noble author off those premises, and spared us a whole dozen such stanzas as the following, and then he lists the mild charities glow section all the way through the end of the piece I just did. And so that's all he says about it, which, honestly, I mean, so much of this, like, shitting on people review bullshit that was so popular then, it irritates me to no end, because there's no substance in this review. He's just kind of shitting on him for the sake of shitting on him. Because what he's saying essentially is that, so there's another poem by a poet, Samuel Rogers, called On a Tear, which is actually kind of a pretty one. I'll link it in the comments of this video. It's about the same length as this, and it's, yeah, it talks about it, you know, the subject matter is the concept of a tear and how it represents this kind of, you know, beautiful moment of vulnerability, and it manifests itself in these powerful emotional moments in human beings. And you know, there's some material there to be written about in poetry. But the idea that Rogers, he did tears, they're off limits, is just, I think, infuriating. And so I can absolutely understand Byron taking this review rather poorly, and then responding in kind with his next big splash, which is English Bards and Scotch Reviewers, which he publishes in kind of response to this just biting criticism. That said, I like this poem less than the one I did last week, for a number of reasons. It kind of feels like, and I can forgive Byron, I suppose, if this is him kind of flexing and exploring, form and subject matter, and kind of stretching himself from a standpoint of putting more tools in his toolbox as a poet. I don't love the form, though. The cadence has kind of a sing-song feel. I don't really like the ending every other line with tear. As a full composition, and this is only the first half of this particular piece, and I actually kind of like some of the lines in the second section a little bit better, but I thought this piece kind of builds. And I did also really like the line he mentioned, what is it? Too oft is a smile, but a hypocrite's wile. That kind of jab. Early, like now, this is before he's been publicly ridiculed. He is already, expressing his disdain and contempt for false friends and people that put on a mask and talk sugar to you in person, but then just shit on you behind your back, which was like the thing to do. I mean, it still kind of is today. Facebook has made that a lot easier. The That it was good to see that. I appreciated seeing that comment in that first, I think that second section. He also, there's near the end of the poem, or the end of the excerpt I just did, makes a reference to as he bends o'er the wave, which may soon be his grave. And that, again, he kind of is, you can see it in some of these pieces where, you know, he's kind of fascinated with death. He's kind of fascinated with the romantic image of dying in an exciting way, whether that's in battle as a soldier, as in that last poem from last week, or in this case, you know, dying on a ship voyage. And, you know, it's a bit of foreshadowing as he kind of, you know, it really does kind of highlight the way he will end up living his life. But yeah, so it was a bit uneven. So I thought that it was good to do these sections because it is explicitly referenced in that review. I can understand Byron taking offense because the criticism was not really substantial or constructive in any way. That said, yeah, I appreciate the kind of atypical form, which again, I say that maybe with a little bit of ignorance. Maybe this is a specific form that he's emulating. I did a little bit of Googling, and I couldn't really find anything that followed a similar form. And I say that specifically with this kind of like, that the form being that he has these kind of sections, 4-line sections, or I guess 6-line sections that end with a tear. That's an interesting approach that I don't. If it read a little less sing-song, I might have appreciated it more. But I mean, you can't fault the guy for exploring, right? The guy's 17, 18 years old. So yeah, I think this was. I've seen online that this is believed to have been written in 1806, which would put him at I think 20. Let me see. Maybe it's 19. I have it 20. Yeah, he would be 20 if he wrote this in 1806. So it's kind of, yeah. Heck, I couldn't write that kind of stuff, and yeah, I feel like that's such a silly thing to find fault with a young writer for doing. But again, that said, I think that is again the importance of starting at the beginning with this particular individual, because he gets nasty. And there was that kind of other I think really representative line with respect to Byron as this kind of lady killer. Give me the soft sigh, as opposed to the hypocrite's smile. Yeah, he may have had an amount of earnest, genuine kindness for his fellow man, but it seems like he really begins to fall in love with himself rapidly. And so next week I'm going to be doing a piece from English Bards and Scotch Reviewers, which is his response to this criticism. And so I think we'll see there the gloves come off, and that he does really write some beautiful stuff later in his career, but you know it's colored, I think, by his life choices. Man, the guy kind of lets his ego just run wild. So. Yeah, that was The Tear from Hours of Idleness. So yeah, thanks for watching. Happy Sunday.